when a pensioner is means tested for their winter fuel allowance, will the costs of any care they are having to pay be taken into account? So I think if we can have a conversation about later life funding and start off with James, that might be an interesting way to end the evening.
Yeah, no problem. So I think the starting point in this discussion is what's the current system. And the current system is that if you require residential care, your house is already included in the means test for funding that care. And that you have an uncapped, currently, right now, an uncapped liability for meeting the costs of that residential care until you have just £23,500 remaining. So raising that floor from 23,500 to 100k is clearly a good thing. Now, there is currently no cap. There was a proposal for one. There was a proposal to bring one in at the end of the Parliament, as would have been, which was sort of originated from Andrew Dilnot's report of around £74,000. I'm glad the Prime Minister has said, after the manifesto was launched, but I'm glad the Prime Minister has said that there will be a cap on your liability. Where that cap is set is a matter for further discussion. But I would expect that the Dilnot point is the sort of starting point, although maybe it's reasonable to say if the floor's been increased, the cap might be increased as well. But I don't think it's unreasonable for that sort of detail to be considered in the Green Paper that follows. Manifestos are about setting a broad direction of travel. Addendums to manifestos announced 72 hours are about clarifying that broad direction of travel. But actually, on page 17 and 18 of the Lib Dem manifesto is their commitment to have a wide-ranging consultation on all of the sort of broad social care policies they've announced. Consultation appears a very great deal in the Labour manifesto as well. The reality is we've set a broad direction of travel. I think that what we've proposed in terms of raising that floor is clearly an improvement. Introducing a cap is very, very necessary. Consulting on the detail, like the inclusion of your care costs against the means testing of your winter fuel allowance, are perfectly reasonable things to consider when bringing forward the Green Paper in due course. And that's not just a peculiarity of our manifesto process. I can give people copies of pages 17 and 18 of the Lib Dem manifesto if they wish. It's actually what happens in manifestos generally.
Thank you. Lorna?
Well, I don't think I can really add to that.
Okay, Andy?
Yeah, I mentioned before that there is a cap for Labour of 72, you said 74, James, was it? You put in place? Okay, £74,000 was going to be the cap on social care. We will be setting up a national care service, specifically element of it for the elderly. And there'll be £1.5 billion a year put into that. That's per year. Okay, so that adds onto that. And we are not scrapping the winter payment because it is a universal benefit, so it needs to actually go to everybody. There are certain individuals in Somerset who recognise that that's one very good way to actually donate their winter fuels payment, and they direct it to Somerset Community Foundation, and Somerset Community Foundation then distribute that to local organisations to support and fund them. So there is actually a benefit for people, A, to give more, to actually use that to benefit local organisations, and that is really helpful. But actually, it's also about recognising that people have put in an enormous amount into the environment around them. They put into the government pot, and they actually need to be treated with respect as they grow older, and that is part of treating people with respect. Just one thing which occurs around the WASPy women, for example, that is an additional blow as to how they have been treated, is that there is been, and still is in place, the gender pay inequality, which I think in this day and age is an absolute total disgrace, that still women are not being paid the same as men for doing the same job. So that is an insult on top of another insult, which has been there in place. And of course, it's in our manifesto to finally put put that one to rest and make sure there is equality in pay.
Tessa.
Thank you. James paints a very rosy picture that everything will be fine after a consultation. I can tell you it's not going to be like that at all. I have to say that the first thing I would do is correct him and say the Lib Dems do have a cap. It's actually 74,000, whatever it is that Andrew Dilnot recommended. That's exactly where we would cap the cost that you have the cost you have in care. But I think it's really, truly very unfair. The dementia tax is an appalling situation where if you've worked hard all your life and you've saved up, this government, the Conservative government, encouraged people to buy their houses, they encourage people to work and they save for their retirement years, and then what happens? They whip your house away from you. I think that's disgraceful. There's nothing that's actually said in the Tory manifesto about what happens. Is it the case that if I die, does my partner, is he able to stay in the house? Are my dependent children able to stay in the house? Is there 100,000 for each of us as a cap? Or is it just for me? What actually happens when you put this on top of stuff like ripping out free school meals and wasting money from the education budget on things like grammar schools and free schools? What that does, it just siphons money out of our education budget. I actually think the direction of travel, you need to look really carefully at what the Conservatives have promised you, because that is the direction. That is the way it's going to go, consultation or not.
Thank you.